Hello and welcome to Aspie Marriage. Today I wanted to talk about the diagnosis. When the doctor said that it's very likely that hubby has it, I went off and did a whole stack of research. Some of my findings was this. I'll put in this description as much as possible that I can that relates to this. But I wanted to read through some of the things just to give you an idea of how it is that he was ticking the boxes as having this. Because remember, I'd been asking family and friends what was going on with him and nobody knew. So when I had my answer, I went and researched just to make sure that, it's most likely accurate. So let's begin. This column is neurotypical reaction. This column here is a person who's neurodiverse, and the fourth column is the effects that it has on neurotypicals. So I'm going to focus on the main two columns, this one and this one, and just explain as I go along what I'm talking about. Not everything here was related to him, like some of it sort of says that, there's psychopathy and different things that are just not related to him. He doesn't have all of the things that this list says, but I'll focus on the ones that are relevant to me and my situation. Theory of mind, theory of own mind, awareness of self and others. And the effect that that has on me is a loss of sense of self, insecurity, uncertainty of own reality. So what's that saying is that most people are self-aware. We can sort of see when I'm losing my temper, I'm looking at the person I'm yelling at and I'm seeing a very distinct reaction, and they're not looking happy and they're looking pretty mad at me. If I keep that up, they're not going to like me very much. Whereas he doesn't have that sense of self. He'll just lose his mind and you're standing there looking all sorts of frightened or whatever. And he is completely unaware. How that has an effect of a loss of sense of self and insecurity and uncertainty. Some of the things that he yells at are things that are either not my fault, it didn't really happen, it's almost a paranoia on his part. So I'm there thinking, I guess I would call it gaslighting, you're making me feel crazy. Yelling at about something that just hasn't happened. So the next one, ability to read and interpret body language and facial expressions. Well, we did just cover that. And the effects that it has on the neurotypical. Emotions are unacknowledged, not validated, and disregarded by partner. Well, that's absolutely happening, and that one there is pretty self-explanatory, hardly needs to go into detail. Ability to repair and maintain relationships, having lifelong friendships. The effect is unresolved disputes, unfinished interactions, unresolved emotional upset, no resolution to problems. Tick, 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 and tick. I mean, that was exactly how things were rolling for us, especially in those early days. I thought I was going to go mad with how many unresolved issues there were, because you'd have a little kind of fallout, and with past relationships we would talk through them and work through them. But in this case here, you couldn't do that with him. He would shut down or get angry, and so then you'd have that one. Then you'd have another fallout and another fallout and another fallout, and in the end you've got all these issues, all these situations where he got angry or upset and you never had a resolution at the end of them. There was no sort of him saying, yeah, I see what you're saying, I shouldn't have really done that. There's none of that. What's next? Emotional reciprocity. Reciprocity. Anyway, you know what I'm trying to say. How I would describe that is, in the early days, I would flirt with him, touch him, hug him, kiss him, compliment him, and I was expecting Not because I have high expectations, but because it's kind of a stock standard human behaviour that he would reciprocate, and he didn't. And I remember that confusing me so much. The effect of that is lack of input, return of feelings and emotional support. It's pretty much just what I said. Desire or need to socialise and make small talk. The effect, lack of intimate connection such as pillow talk, real friendship and loving foreplay. Again, enormous ticks here, enormous ticks. I understand his desire to avoid small talk. I'm not a fan myself. But when it talks about the lack of input, their lack of intimate connection, such as pillow talk, that's a really interesting one for me, because we never have pillow talk. And as I say that, one of my counsellors said, don't use the word never. It's defeating. However, in some cases within this relationship, the word never is very apt. He doesn't sort of roll over and face me after the funky's been done and we're having some nice conversations or anything like this. It just doesn't go that way. He's very much like, the deed is done, I've gotten what I wanted from it, it's now time for rolling over and going to sleep. And it's the same if we did it in the morning, the afternoon, it doesn't matter. He is straight out of bed and he's often doing something. So there's that definite lack of connection after the deed is done. Real friendship and loving foreplay. Well, again, foreplay's a big issue for us. We'll get to videos about that later. Yes, later. Abstract language, unrequited efforts to make themselves heard, lack of loving banter. Well, we definitely had in the early days a lack of loving banter, but that has kind of built. We will sort of joke around and play around as time goes on. Desire to share, own and others' interests. He might talk about his interests, as most Aspies do. I'm happy to listen to them, learn about them, gauge in them so that I can be part of the conversation. But when it comes to my interests, you can kind of see his eyes glaze over a little bit if I start talking. And in the early days, he was often saying to me, I don't want to talk about the stuff you want to talk about, because he just straight up was like, I'm not finding this interesting. The effect is a loneliness in the relationship and few shared positive memories. That was certainly a thing in the beginning, before I knew that he had Asperger's and before I understood what he was doing and why he was doing the things that he was doing. I was very lonely because he wouldn't talk, because as I just said, anytime I wanted to talk about something I wanted to talk about, he would literally tell me that he didn't want to hear it. He was often going, shh, the telly's on. I remember numerous occasions. I mean, if it was my telly, who knows what I might have done to it, but because it was his, like I wanted to put a brick through it, I'd be like, fucking telly. Shared positive memories. I mean, we did have some shared positive memories. That's the thing that keeps it going, and I will talk about that later on as well. Takes responsibility for own actions. This is a neurotypical response. They'll generally take responsibility for their actions. Now, I've met plenty of neurotypicals who don't. I've met plenty of individuals who don't. It may be a particular Aspie trait, but there are certainly traits that Aspies have that individuals who aren't Aspies may also have. This would definitely be one of them. So the effect is falsely blamed, develops strong anger arising from injustices and false accusations. Again, massive tick. That has been my world. As I said before, he'll scream and yell at me and stand over me pointing a finger and telling me I've done something wrong. And I'm standing there knowing full well that what he's yelling at me for didn't happen. But I'm being blamed, I've got anger arising from that blame, and I'm resentful for the injustices and false accusations. That is definitely a key trigger in our relationship, and actually one of the things in those early days I really didn't understand. I was so confused, just being blamed for things that they just straight up aren't how do you word this? They're a non-event, they're a non-thing. So for example, him getting angry that I hadn't defrosted the meat before I'd gone to work in the morning, that's not a catastrophe, that's just a random thing that happens from time to time. But he would lose his mind over it, and then I would feel that an injustice has been done because who cares, it's just meat, calm your farm, it's all okay. Anyway, difference in perspectives as well there. Ability to react spontaneously. Efficiency of positive feedback or assistance. The effect is not the effect that I'm quite having there. When he has a failure or inability to be spontaneous, I don't have a deficiency of positive feedback. There may be a deficiency in assistance. I'll give you an example. In order to try and spice up our sex life, I said to him, I want you to think of 3 different things you don't normally do with regards to the lead up or foreplay, and then choose one and do it. And he sat there for a while, kind of thinking, and in the end I gave him 3 suggestions and let him choose. And so it was a way moving forward, but there was a definite lack of assistance in how fun or creative or whatever that sex session was going to go, because it was up to me to be the one to come up with those creativities and spontaneity. Innate knowledge about social behaviour, undesired isolation, lack of options for full participation in life, controlled, narrow social life. 100%. 100%. His innate knowledge about how social behaviours go. He doesn't understand that when you go out with people, everybody there is wondering, am I liked? Am I looking attractive in this outfit? Am I smiling enough? Is my makeup splurged? Is my bald patch showing? Whatever it is that a person is thinking about themselves. This is what we do when we go out. When he goes out, he thinks everybody there is focusing directly on him, and more in particular me and how I reflect on him, and that is all that he can focus on. So prior to the event, there's all this stress around that. During the event, he's smiles and rainbows and sunshine, and everybody thinks this guy's really fun, and look at him, he's having a great old time, yeah. And at the end of the event, I will be attacked for something that hasn't happened, because in his mind, everybody was focused on me and I did that thing. It definitely got to a point where we didn't socialise much because of that. Ability to show love and respect in tone of voice, eyes, treatment of others. Effect, object of manipulation, intermittent reward, experiences fear with loss of trust in the relationship and self. So if I focus on the left part, ability to show love and respect in tone of voice. We're often saying to him as a family, because it's not just me that this is affecting, it's not really what you're saying, it's how you're saying it, because he can say the most harmless thing, like, how long's the dishwasher been left like this? And that is a situation where I turned it on, was doing something and I needed the house to be quiet, and then I forgot to turn it back on. But the way that he says it is almost accusatory. It's got this gruff tone. So he'll say something like, how long's the dishwasher been left like this? And you're like, it's okay. We can just press start again and it'll be right. But it's that tone that he delivers it in, and he's always got this scowl, you know, he's got this thing. It's a bit frightening. Eye contact and treatment of others. Well, obviously I've just explained there that his treatment of others can seem a bit gruff and rough. We do find that we're walking on eggshells, we're trying to avoid him, we're kind of running for the hills. One of my counsellors tried to tell me that this is stonewalling, but I 100% disagree. I think it's just straight up protection. Somebody's attacking you like a pit bull. It's not stonewalling if you go into your room and lock the door. It's self-preservation, you know. You don't want to be treated that way. You don't want to feel that. You don't want to be offended or hurt. Fear of loss of trust in the relationship and self. There's definitely been loss of trust. Over the years that trust is getting less and less. Like, I have this rhetoric in my head of, I don't know when he's going to lose his temper, but I know he will. It's a given. It's going to happen. And I never know when. And that, of course, has you distrusting him and having that feeling of walking on eggshells. Mature ability to control thoughts, emotions, words, actions according to circumstances. The effect, living in constant stress, fear, unresolved anger, domestic abuse and violence, death by 1,000 paper cuts, ongoing traumatic relationship syndrome, OTRS. So that's absolutely what's going on for us. If I go back to the statement, the lack of ability to control thoughts or emotions or words, 100%. A situation will happen and he's kind of like a volcano. He will just explode and there'll be lava pouring down and pumice rocks coming at you and, you know, pyroclastic ash and, I mean, yikes, you're running for the hills. It's really just that simple. And yeah, we live in a constant state of fear and stress. We're often telling him things have happened. You know, if you break something, for example, because you don't want him to explode, that definitely does lead to unresolved anger. I can even hear that in the children now that they're getting older, and he'll start speaking to them and they've got this tone. It's like this, Dad, Dad, stop talking. I don't want to hear it. You know, this is what they're doing because they're getting this level of frustration where they're thinking, just please stop. Please, don't do it anymore. Driving me bananas. Domestic abuse and violence. We don't have a lot of that. He's never really been physical. He's done the odd sort of thing where I've seen that he's wanted to, like you can just see the body language, the build, you know, and he'll kind of make a move and then realise, no, I can't do anything like that. But there is definitely verbal abuse. His level of yelling and lack of control is definitely verbal abuse. Death by 1,000 cuts. So I explained to him the other day, I had this piece of paper with a love heart on it, and I said to him, when I first met you, I was that plain, smooth love heart. I was open and warm and willing and ready to take you in. Like there was no part of me that was holding back. I was just prepared to be as giving as it took. But over the years, each time he's done his attack or insult or berate or critique, or it's kind of like a hole being stabbed into the heart. And now you've got a piece of paper with all these stab marks. And you can try and sticky tape those together, but it's never going to be the same. The damage will be there. It alters the way that you feel about them. And this is probably one of the hardest parts for him to grasp. He just wants me to be like, that happened then, let us move on. I can try to forget, I can try to move on, I can try to forgive, and even if I never thought of it again, there is this part, this sort of thing going on within your heart, and you can just feel that it's kind of tighter, tense. It's very hard to explain, but over the years it's really hard to just let your guard down, let him in. Straight up, I just feel differently towards him now. I can't be any other way. It just is what it is. And death by 1,000 cuts, death is our love affair. We're still friends and comrades and we get along well, but the love is just being chiseled at, and there's just not the same level that there was at the beginning. That's pretty much what I was going to focus on here. So let me try to find one of the ones that he doesn't have. The typical response is balanced development of emotional and intelligence skills, intellectual skills. The effect of lacking that is Feelings of being socially mimicked and depended upon as a social seeing eye dog and surrogate parent. Socially, he's on the ball. He's got that. He's not stressed about it at all. If he is stressed about it at all, you would never know. He doesn't seem to go into a room and kind of stand in a corner like a wallflower. He doesn't seem dependent on me being there in order to feel safe or secure, or needing me to guide him in the direction of what is socially acceptable and what is not. He's very unlikely to perform social gaffes. In fact, he's far more likely to be assuming that I'm the one doing those. So in that regard, he doesn't have that trait. Anyway, that's me going through this. This was the things that I was discovering that made me realise, yes, he is Aspie, and that explains everything. Leave a comment below if this has been eye-opening for you. I'd love to hear from you and have you share your thoughts and let me know if it was the same for you or if some of these resonate and some of them do not. And thank you very much for taking the time to watch this video.